So we're online. Welcome to the program.
Hello. Hi, everyone. First of all, many thanks to the CANactions School for the invitation. I am Claudia, and I am here to represent a group of 5 people. Just to an introduction, we are Fosbury Architecture, and we name our group after Dick Fosbury. As you might know, Dick Fosbury was an average high jumper who changed completely his discipline by inventing the back-first jump technique and winning the gold medal at the Olympic Games in 1968. What our group sees in the Fosbury flop is not so much a hint toward progress, but rather an invitation to look at the obstacle from a lateral point of view and actually to overcome it literally turning your Fosbury Architecture was born in 2013 during our last years at the Politecnico di Milano, where we studied. And we decided to form a group of people that could serve as a platform to work together and actually to confront on theoretical subjects within the larger frame of the discipline. We thought that the horizontal structure of the collective could be the best form to oppose to a labor market that seems to reject our expectations and to go against the architect as a lonely mine on top of the design process. This is the current composition of the collective. Until let's say that until last year, it was almost impossible to coincide all together in the same place. And in fact, this that is actually our official portrait for many years is actually a photomontage. Now, since few months, actually since January, we converge all back to Milan. But then, okay, the pandemic started, but this is, of course, another story. So let's start. Let's say that our ongoing research on the relationship between domesticity and the internet started as a sort of a spin-off in 2015 of our winning proposal for Eurofund 13 in the Netherlands. The site was the city of Leeuwarden, a picturesque center of Friesland, situated in the north of the Netherlands, that will have become soon the European capital of culture. As many other shrinking cities in rural Europe, let's say that the center was suffering of the abandonment of, let's say, young people with the subsequent aging of the population and the increase of vacant spaces. And the brief of the competition was asking for a strategy to address these problems. So we started with the classical mapping of the vacant spaces and of the existing infrastructure for tourists. And we soon noticed an abundance actually of these vacancies that are the little dots that you can see in the image here. And somehow, let's say that this triggered the idea that these vacant spaces were the object of our investigation. Another observation was the fact that, let's say, the impact of an event like the European Capital of Culture has a peak in the flow in the years of the event that is followed by a fast decrease, basically making pointless any large investments in accommodation and infrastructure. And for this reason, we propose a simple strategy able to connect these two phenomena. So transforming the vacant spaces, so the homes, the shops, and the offices, into accommodations and other temporary activities, and distributing the benefits to a larger group of population. So to do so, we propose to use sharing platforms, and especially the home sharing ones. And we did it, of course, taking into account their counter effects, but we accepted them in the perspective of the dramatic state of the city center. So this made us question the boundaries within which the sharing space is acceptable. And this produced, once again, a urban vision, where in a single dwelling, two conditions coexist. On the one hand, the commodified field of an accessory object, and on the other, an almost sacral space for the inhabitation, which is marked by the blue lines you can see in the image. Let's say as a sort of existence minimum 2.0, where beyond the sacral space of the bedroom, provided with a good Wi-Fi connection, almost all the amenities of the house can be quantified. So in this diagram, we price some of them, taking data from different platforms, and we order them accordingly to a degree of intimacy. Despite, let's say, visionary and almost dystopian scenario, and the fact that we were almost excluded by the competition for the roughness of the representation, we were awarded with the first prize for the radical pragmatism of the proposal. This to quote what the jury said at that moment. But let's move then to the core of the research. Let's say that our proposal for Europan was somehow a milestone for our research, indeed, as a group. It was, in fact, the moment when we put on paper a series of observations on the progressive blurring of the public and private spaces, and their impacts, of course, on the architecture. Something reminiscent of the 70s utopias of the radicals, and a new condition in which domesticity invades every field of human activity, including the workspaces, and where the house is more and more a workspace and a medium for subsistence, a condition that I'm sure we all experience, especially in these times. Imagine that before the current emergency, 1 to 10 people in UK work from home, and 1 to 5 of them did work, back office work from bed. So making the home and the bedroom, let's say, the battlefield of labor of the 21st century. Whereas the home sharing platforms has transformed the house into an economic asset, so producing a perverse cycle in which paraphernalia of domesticity, like ficus plants or memorabilia, are used to enhance a diffuse sense of comfort in order to sell better the domestic product. So this produces, of course, an homogenization of spaces at large, where the common feature is reassuring a wide background. And IKEA, in this sense, is one of the major triggers of this homogenization of the domestic. Imagine that its catalog is the most printed book in the world, surpassing the Bible, with its 200 million copies. And that it is estimated that the Billy shelf system is the most diffused piece of furniture in the world, selling a single piece every 10 seconds. So the definition that better describes this seamless sense of coziness is the one of the, or at least for us, is the one of the airspace. term invented by an American freelance journalist called Kylie Chaika. That refers to that crafted sense of domesticity broadcasted by the social media that is shaping the interiors globally, so from New York to Bali. The airspace is the realm of, in fact, coffee shop and co-working, industrial and vintage furniture, fast internet, smoothies, and the avocado sandwiches. Let's say a sort of pervasive taste that is imposing this new lifestyle on a global scale. So we therefore started to look for an alternative to this globalized flattening of taste. And we started to look at the environments. So those private and personal spaces that are in between furniture and architecture. In the preface of the New Domestic Landscape, Emilio Ambas defines the environments more or less as adaptable enough to permit the private and communal events, but yet fixed enough to permit the reenactment of individual and social rituals. So we therefore, let's say, isolated a series of features. In fact, they are anthropometric and not standard. They are monumental and not cozy. They are bulky and not market friendly. And they are made with the sole purpose to accommodate the idiosyncrasies of their occupants. So we compiled a large catalog that we are now, let's say, gathering and posting online on our Instagram page, actually, called Environments of Resistance, of course. Here you have some extracts, just to have an idea of what I'm speaking about. So all these made us recognize a series of recurrent archetypes that then we decided to redesign. So we finally transformed them in a taxonomy of objects, and here you have a conversation pit, but you have also a bath unit, meditation pod, a game pod, a pregadio, and a boudoir. But of course, the list can continue. And finally, this drawing see all of them as a counterpart of generic interior. Finally, we also tested an environment in one-to-one, and here you have a mock-up for another exhibition done in Milan a few years ago. So, let's say that this project has been the chance for us to use the environments, these other projects, sorry, in home, to use the environments catalog to produce a design for a house that responded to specific needs and parameters. Let's say, indeed, the first time in which we could translate some things that we got from that study into architecture. So we have been invited by Jack Self of Real Review to participate to an exhibition called Mean Home, to be developed together with Jack himself and Ada Nathaniel Fuhrman. So to give you an overview, Mean Home was meant to be a confrontation between the Italian and the British architects to design the Mean Home, so the average home. And while Jack was designing a house for Italians, you were invited to design a house for the British, yet considering the average parameters of Italian and British home. So here, a brief summary of the parameters that we took into account and that were compiled for the catalog of the exhibition. So we basically investigated on the average number of people living in home, whether they have children, the average number of rooms, the cost per square meters, and finally the magnitude of home debt in relation to the GDP. This became an installation set in the exhibition space within the British School at Rome, made up of big boxes whose colors were selected by Adam while he was looking into movies of Italian shot in Britain, like Blow Up, and British shot in Italy, like The Italian Job. And these boxes contain a few small miniatures of our little homes, and of course their interiors. And our investigation started. It started with an analysis of the average size in the British homes. As you can see, after the 60s and 70s, neoliberalism and its progressive attack to the welfare state have pushed the average condition back to a pre-war scenario. Whereas the average occupants of 2.4 people outlines a scenario where families have no more children and most people share their flat. So, synthesizing this data, we obtained the basic parameters of our British home, and we literally took the footprint of 72 square meters as a starting point. As requested by the curator, in order to represent in our house our ideas of Britishness, we look into British references, of course, starting from the 60s and 70s onwards. Here, the first home designed by Jen Stirlings with James Bowen. And we compare it with the footprint of our house. Then we look into brutalist references, high-tech ones, here Richard Rogers, and popular ones, here Charles Jenks. And finally, as in most Fosbury projects, we do not fear cliché, and definitely the bow window is an epitome of the Britishness, so that overcome any discourse, and so we decided to place it in two. The result is a simple design that uses the rational plan and footprint of a high-tech house, the materials palette of a brutalist house, and the spatial technology of a palm house. So challenging the boundaries between the furniture and the space. But since 72 square meters were really few to design a home for 2-3 people, we cheated a bit and we added a belt of bow windows that indeed work as a sort of boiserie. So for the same reason, we decided not to design any room, but instead to use the services as well as the furniture to fit what should have been 5 rooms. So the kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, and the 2 bedrooms. And this produced a fluid empty space which meld together alcoves and sofas, a bath unit, a kitchenette, and a little chimney open to the garden with, let's say, the classical British backyard, seamlessly perceptible through the glazed wall running all around. So here one of the alcoves which overlook the living room, and a detail of the boiserie and the kitchen. Okay, so let's move on to the next project. Gepri Amour is a project research we presented at the second Chicago Biennale in 2017. And I want to present this within this lecture because it also let us continue, let's say, our research on domesticity. And let's say, in this case, we decided to look in particular to a successful case of immaterial workers. That is the one of the YouTubers and influencers. So these people, as you know, can make large profit for their production, and they have a global reach, working primarily from home. So the private space of the bedroom for them is not merely a shelter, but rather an office and a workspace. So recording studio, but also a set. Let's say a curated space for the representation of one's internet character. And while looking for the archetype of a private space used for personal representation, we decided to look at the Renaissance studiolo, and more in particular, more specifically to the studiolo for Federico da Montefeltro, Duke of Urbino. Where, as you can see, the complex ensemble of objects and allegories that decorate the room depicts the cultural and political agenda of a mercenary soldier who aim to portray himself as a humanist and patron of art. So let's say that architecture and artisanship are employed with the precise purpose of promoting a public image in a sort of unprecedented in today's social media. So the installation is conceived around a fictional character that we name Christine de Pisan 93. Nickname, of course, of Christine de Pisan, who is a super young gamer. Here, her, let's say, fictional workstation, computer, sorry, and her 3x6, sorry, meters studio flat, rented in a collective building called Pietro Hub in Chicago. So that space was conceived as an hybrid of a monastery, a commune, and a phalanstery that echoes the YouTube spaces, or rather the network of hubs built to support the wannabe stars. And we decided to design the room of Chrissy in one-to-one, reinterpreting indeed the studiolo in the room. The drawing is composed by 7 perspective views, combine a unique drawing to give the illusion of moving into a three-dimensional space. And as in Federico's studiolo, we placed a series of objects used to delineate Chrissy's personality and to describe the community of YouTubers, epitome of the internet generation. So here you can see a view of Chrissy's workstation, and here a view of her bedroom, filled with everyday objects, guilty pleasures, sophisticated geek memorabilia. Here, indeed, a few details. And again, in the room, a series of books that reveal the cultural stand of a young girl torn between the struggle, the class struggle, sorry, feminism, and economic opportunism of the internet. In the end of the room, we thought to represent a trompe-l'œil of the real view we would have on the Millennium Park in Chicago, where we decided to substitute the Squirrel of Urbino with more contemporary cats playing with avocado, that is for us the symbol, as mentioned earlier, of this pervasive domesticity. Okay, this is the last project I would like to present you today. Still, of course, related to similar topic and the relation between the private and the public and through the internet. So last year we have been selected to participate to Augures, exhibition part of the first Paris Biennial Architecture in Versailles. That was focusing on sustainability, a theme that actually we never approached so directly. So instead of, let's say, tackle the issue on a global scale, we rather decided to continue our investigation between the domestic and the internet, yet taking a completely different angle. In fact, if for Chicago, we were looking at those spaces that the internet have produced through the social media, in this specific case, we look at the sustainability of the internet and new spaces it has created, analyzing the daily routine of a worker, once again focusing. So, in the Maslow pyramid of needs related to the internet, at the first position, we have the influencers. So influencer, bloggers, and etc. So all these people who are able to produce a huge amount of money, broadcasting their monotonous life 24/7, and working primarily from home. At the second, we have the intellectuals who like to live of their cultural production and have a personal recognition that pass through the social media, but they struggle to define the limits of their discipline. And finally, on the third position, we have the contemporary miners or blue collars 2.0. Category that we were interested in and that for us reminded somehow a sort of digital gold rush. Let's say that in all the three categories, the common element is for sure the dematerialization of the profession and the impact they have on the domestic environment. So in 2009, the Bitcoins and the blockchain by Satoshi Nakamoto, if I'm not mistaken the name, were born. And despite the legislative dubs, the volatile currency and the high costs, many people actually invested in them, creating proper digital minds in their closet. So for sure, we are not expert in such matter, but really roughly, the way they work is to put a lot of GPU in series connected to a generator. And in this way, of course, they augment increasingly the computational capacity and also increasing a lot the need of energy. And let's say, making, of course, a really basic cost-benefit analysis, one realized soon that in order to let business become efficient, it is then necessary to increase the capacity, reaching a point in which the computers come out from the closets, invading almost your homes. So this, of course, then led to two main architecture issues. So on one side, the energy, on the other, the need to dissipate the heat. So the research was inspired by two spam stories found randomly online on the internet. The first one is the story of a Siberian couple that had the brilliant idea to exploit the excess of heat produced by the production of cryptocurrency to heat a small home. So in this way, they produce a complete autonomous system in which they could, let's say, they didn't have any extra cost for the heating, and they also had an average profit of $450, if I'm not mistaken, a month coming from the Bitcoin. The second story comes from, let's say, same latitude, but other side of the world, from Toronto, where a photographer over 10 years shot around 800 pics of these typical Canadian huts for fishing. This dwelling has, let's say, the ability to be movable and to resist to the low temperature. And here are just few, but the solutions can be unlimited, unlimited as personal as the choices of their owners. So a sort of Ledoux, let's say, like experiment in which not only the form follows the function, but where the nature of the person who lives in them pushes the space at the limit of the symbolism. So what we did was to design these private, self-sufficient and anthropometric houses for crypto miners, enlarging the catalog of the environments of resistance, whose, as you can clearly see, geometry shapes, whose, let's say, whose geometry was shaped echoes the ones of the radiators, exemplifying a cyber aesthetic. That's it. Thank you. Okay, I see a question. Just one second. Okay, so I see a question that asks for what's going on at the moment in Milan and what I think will happen in the near future. Well, the situation in Milan is for sure better compared to at least 2 weeks ago. What's gonna happen soon or later in a few weeks is really we don't know. We are for sure also we are also curious to see what can happen little by little. But for now, it's good that we can start, let's see, at least going out and let's say escape from the house from which for more than 2 months we were almost prisoners. Okay, thank you.